Everyone keeps telling you to go out more, to be social, to show up, to be seen. But right now, in 2026, an entire generation of women is quietly closing the door, and they are not missing out. They are building something. If you stay with this until the end, you will understand what most people never figure out. That the most powerful thing you can do in a noisy, overextended world is know exactly where your energy belongs. There is something that almost nobody says out loud. Loving your home is not a flaw. It is not laziness. It is not social failure. And it is not something that needs to be fixed by a therapist or a social media challenge. The woman who genuinely prefers her own space is often the most self-aware person in any room she chooses to enter. She is not avoiding life. She is curating it. She knows what fills her and what drains her. She creates inside her own walls. She thinks deeply because she is not constantly absorbing the noise of other people's emergencies. She manages her energy with the same precision that other people spend managing their schedules. That is not weakness. That is discipline most people will never develop. The world outside that door is loud, unpredictable, and full of stimulation the nervous system was never designed to process at this volume. And your body knows it. Every time you walk through your own front door after a long day, something in you releases. That is not imagination. That is your parasympathetic nervous system, the part of you built for rest and recovery, finally being allowed to do its job. Cortisol levels drop. Your muscles stop holding. Your mind stops scanning for threats. You come back to yourself. For some women, home is simply one of many places they feel safe. But for others, home has become the only place. And that distinction matters more than most people realize. When the outside world begins to feel not just uncomfortable but dangerous. When the thought of a grocery run makes your chest tight. When canceled plans feel like relief instead of disappointment. When your world keeps getting smaller, and somehow you start calling that peace. Something important is happening. Your nervous system is no longer protecting you. It is containing you. Now, before going further, there is something that needs to be said clearly, because it is one of the most misunderstood concepts in the language of personality. Introversion is not shyness. They are not the same thing. Shyness is a fear of social judgment. It is rooted in anxiety. A person can be deeply extroverted and still be terrified of what others think. And a person can be thoroughly introverted and walk into any room with complete confidence, hold the attention of everyone in it, and then go home and need 3 days of silence to recover. Introversion is simply the answer to one question. Where do you get your energy? Introverts refuel in solitude. Extroverts refuel in connection. That is the whole core of it. Neither is better. Neither is a diagnosis. They are just different operating systems running on different power sources. If you are introverted, loving your home makes complete sense. It is where you go from depleted to whole again. There is nothing that needs correcting. But the question worth sitting with is this. Are you honoring your introversion, or are you using it as a reason to never be uncomfortable again? Because those are two very different things. Now here is the part that may be the most important in this entire conversation. Sometimes the reason home feels better has nothing to do with personality. Sometimes it has everything to do with what happened to you outside of it. Maybe there was a relationship that taught you people could not be trusted. Maybe there was a moment of public humiliation that left something unresolved. Maybe you grew up in an environment where the world outside felt unpredictable. And staying close, staying quiet, staying home was how you learned to survive. The nervous system does not forget those lessons easily. Here is what the brain does with pain like that. It generalizes. One betrayal becomes people cannot be trusted. One unsafe environment becomes the world is not safe. One moment of exposure becomes I cannot be seen. The brain is not trying to harm you. It is trying to prevent that particular feeling from ever happening again. But the cost of that protection grows over time, often exceeding the original wound by a significant margin. This is what a trauma response looks like in everyday life. And this is a word that can be said without drama, because trauma does not always arrive as a single catastrophic event. Sometimes it is the slow accumulation of moments where you felt abandoned, unseen, too much, or not enough. The result is a woman who, without realizing she made a decision, has decided that the world beyond her door is not worth the risk. If that is familiar, the answer is not to force yourself outside. The answer is to gently, honestly ask, am I still making decisions based on something that is already over? The person who hurt you is not in every room anymore. That environment no longer exists. You are not the same woman you were then. What happened in the past needs to be processed, not carried forward as a permanent map of how the world works. There is one more layer that deserves attention, and it is rarely spoken about with any precision. Some women do not prefer home simply because they are introverted. They prefer it because their nervous system processes sensory information at a fundamentally deeper level than most people around them. The psychologist Elaine Aron developed the concept of the highly sensitive person to describe individuals whose nervous systems register stimulation more intensely. For these women, a loud crowd is not just annoying, it is physically exhausting. Bright fluorescent lights, strong perfume, chaotic energy in a room, these are not minor inconveniences. They are genuine neurological events that require real recovery time. If this describes you, your preference for home is not a preference. It is a requirement. Your nervous system needs lower stimulus environments to process everything it has already absorbed from the outside world. Understanding this is not a small thing. It reframes the internal story from, why can I not handle what everyone else handles, to, I experience the world more intensely, and I need to honor that. But even here, even with the most legitimate neurological explanation on the table, there is still a difference between understanding your sensitivity and hiding behind it. Highly sensitive women do live full, rich, engaged lives. They simply learn to manage their environments deliberately. They plan their recovery time. They choose when to be exposed and when to protect themselves. They do not disappear entirely. They navigate intelligently. Now here is what the most underrated truth in this entire conversation actually is. Time alone, chosen time, intentional time inside your own space, is one of the most radical acts of self-development available to you. Every great thinker, every artist, every person who built something that lasted, has spoken about the necessity of solitude. Not isolation. Not avoidance. Solitude. In genuine solitude, you hear yourself. Without the noise of other people's opinions, other people's emergencies, and other people's lives, you find out what you actually think, what you actually want, and what you actually believe. The world in 2026 is louder than it has ever been. Social media, notifications, constant stimulation, the pressure to be productive, visible, and always optimized. Most people never stop long enough to simply exist. The woman who loves her home has access to something most people are too overstimulated to reach. The question is what she does with it. Are you using your time at home to know yourself more deeply? To create? To rest in ways that genuinely restore you? To think, to grow? Or are you spending hours inside these walls, numbing, scrolling, passively consuming? Avoiding the discomfort of actually being present with yourself? Solitude without intention is just isolation. Solitude with intention is architecture. It is how you build the internal structure that allows you to step into the world with clarity instead of fear. Your home should be where you return to yourself. A sanctuary, not a hiding place. The difference between those two things is not the four walls. It is what you are doing while you are inside them. And it is whether the door is a choice or a barrier. You do not need to become someone who thrives on chaos. You do not need to become an extrovert. You do not need to perform comfort in places that genuinely cost you. What you need is to become so grounded in who you are, so clear on what you are building, that when you do walk out that door, you go as yourself, fully formed, not as someone running from a version of the world that no longer exists. Your home is where you come back to. Make sure you are actually coming back.